All right. Well, welcome to Town Hall 77. I think the last one for the year, if I'm right.
It sounds like it.
Yep. And it's heading into 2022. I just got done doing a fintech roundup for the IC, which was fascinating to talk about kind of what are the things that we think are going to really affect it. And, digital being the top of the list. So it was interesting. I think 2022 is going to be an interesting year.
Yep.
Well, let's get moving here. So first off, welcome. My name's John Best. I'm the CEO, co-founder of Best Innovation Group. And with me, as always, is Glenn Sarvati. No, I'm just kidding. And Mike Lawson.
Well, and Glenn too.
We need to put his picture up here. If he becomes a regular, we'll put him in.
I think you should.
But, when I started this thing, isn't that a song? When we started this thing, something like that. I think it's a Motley Crue song. Anyways, when we started this thing, I said, my God, I'm worried that I need some help for this. And I just called Mike and there was no hesitation. He jumped right in. And so
Heck yeah,
been here a lot and all the time. And it's actually a highlight of my week to get to see.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it is mine as well.
So let's move on here and we'll get to our sponsors. I'll take the first one. CUNA Councils. I don't know if you know this, Mike, but CUNA is a really big organization.
I've heard of them before.
It's the Credit Union National Association.
Mm-hmm.
You know how long it's been around?
A couple of years.
It was formed, I believe, in 1936. You know where it was formed?
Wisconsin, Madison.
Estes Park, Colorado. They all went to Estes Park as a meeting.
Really?
You know what else is in Estes Park?
Trees.
The inspiration for the hotel in The Shining.
Oh, what a great movie.
Yeah.
Love that movie.
CUNA has been around a long time, and what they do is they basically provide a lot of resources for credit unions, particularly in every discipline of the credit union space, including specific credit union type content. And they have a HR meeting, they have a tech meeting, they have their lending meeting. I mean, just so many of them, and it's always fun to. I know you and I both have been to many of those over the years, but the best part about those meetings is the connectivity and what what you get as a takeaway and what you learn from it. So super exciting to have them as a sponsor, to continue to have them as a sponsor. And we're thankful for that.
Good people.
Mike, you're
for
up.
Sure. What's that?
You're up.
Oh, sorry. I'm cold.
I can see. Yeah, it's hard for you to hear. I
I'm
see
in
your
San
breath.
Diego and I'm cold.
I can see your breath.
36 degrees this morning here in San Diego. That doesn't really happen that much here.
Isn't there a law against that or something?
I think so. Yeah. It's time to move to Mexico. So we'll see about that. Anyway, I digress. Hey, y'all, as they say in the South, do y'all need a new core processor? Well, you might want to check out Correlation. Yeah, they are hands down one of the best core processors in the industry today. Their core processor, Keystone, was built from scratch, John, from the ground up. It was brand spanking new. They didn't use any legacy, nothing, none of that.
Somebody just opened the programming tool and pressed enter and said new.
Right, new.
Huh.
But they built it from scratch. That would actually be John Landis, who started the whole thing and built it from scratch. So great stuff from the folks at Correlation and their Keystone core, and it's kind of an open architecture, allowing any third-party vendor to kind of almost plug and play into the core processors, which allows credit unions the freedom to kind of pick and choose who they want to work with if they're going out there and working with these third-party vendors. So really, really cool stuff. Kind of an early version of open banking, I think, so it's a pretty cool what they're doing over there. And they are growing like crazy for good reason, because their product is pretty darn good. So again, if you're a credit union out there on the fence about your core and looking for something new, I highly recommend checking out Correlation. That'd be correlationinc.com. And just great people there, been around for many, many years. And a lot of those folks over there are, just core processor studs, pros, however you want to call them. It's like an all-star team over there at Correlation. So again, I would highly recommend checking them out if you're in that market for a new core.
So Mikey, let's play a little role-playing game here. I love this. I'm going to be the credit union call center operator.
Yes.
And you be a member. So go ahead and here you go. Bring. Hello, and thank you for calling Full Service Credit Union. How can I help you?
Yeah, I need to know what my balance is.
Oh, we can help you with that.
Oh, excellent.
Before we do that, I need to just make sure it's you. I hope you understand whatever your name is.
Oh, I totally understand.
Yeah, yeah. So
My
first of
name's
all,
Mike.
what's your member number?
Um,
Don't know it. You
well,
don't know
as
your
Rob
member number?
Gronkowski says on those TV commercials, 87.
87. Okay. So I'm gonna just real quick. I'm gonna put this behind my back. Tell me how many fingers I have. It's between 1 and 5.
Well, 5, I'm guessing.
No, that's 1. I'm sorry. I'm gonna have to hang up now. You're
Oh,
not a real
shoot.
person. Thanks. Bye.
Well, I'll try again later.
Hello. Thanks for calling First Service. Services of Service Credit Union. How can I help you?
Yeah, hi. I'd like to check my balance.
Sure. Can you tell me the last 10 things that you bought on November 12th, 2018? Go.
Oh gosh. Well, I know where we bought it from, and that would be
I'm
Amazon,
sorry, that's
because
wrong.
it
I have to
appears-
go. I
Shoot.
appreciate you calling, but good luck. Obviously, you're a fraudster. See,
Yeah,
that's
that's
how
a
it
tough
goes
crowd.
most of the time. Now let's do the real quick one, the easy one. Here we go. Bring. Hello, thanks for calling. Super Service Credit Union. How may I help you?
Service. I love the name Super Service. Yeah, hi. I'd like to know my balance, please.
Sure. But I'm going to just send a quick identification concept using our Member Pass platform.
Okay.
Should come to your phone right now. Do you see it?
Yes, I do. Oh my gosh, there it is. Thank you.
Oh,
for
I
that.
see you just checked in. That's great. How can I help you, Mr. Lawson? Oh, by
Yeah,
the
I
way,
just need
did
to
you
know my
get your loan with the car? I know you were working on a lending. See,
We
that's
did,
how it
yes.
should be. That's how it
Yes,
should be.
we
So that's
did.
what Member Pass
Perfect.
does, in case you didn't know. And they're actually, John, I think is coming out to CES with me and John Ainsworth, and we're going to talk about the metaverse, which is awesome.
Oh yeah.
Can't
Yeah,
wait
we
to
just
talk about
interviewed
the
him about the metaverse and their
Yep.
partnership with Liquid Avatar. Oh my gosh.
Yep. So
Mind blowing.
CU Broadcast, for those of you that don't know, and I imagine everybody who's here does, but the number one most highly rated, nicest person in the industry and for news is Mr. Lawson. And if you haven't been to his website, I think he posts something on the order of 22 stories a day.
Seems like that's
I don't know how he finds time to do it and edit everything, but it's magic. It's a miracle, and you can learn so much. I try to get out there at least 3 times a week. Lots of new content, lots of innovators, lots of great people. So cubroadcast.com. And finally, Big FinTech, if you're interested in learning what we do, which lately, we've been doing a ton of, Mike.
What's that?
And it's interesting because this relates to the top trends that, FinTech trends for 2015. Did you know that now fully 67% of the United States has used or is using online banking?
67%?
Yeah, that number is way up from where it was. And it's through 2020. That's what did it.
Oh, wow.
And the rest of 2021.
You're right.
But you know what's happening?
What?
Is a lot of members are discovering what I call digital dysfunction. You know what digital dysfunction is?
I do not know.
I'll give you an example. Fernando Ortega from GCU and I were talking about this the other day, where you can go to say you can go to the branch and you can do a principal only payment on your mortgage, but guess what? You can't do it on the digital site. And so, but if that's something you want to do and you have to go to the branch anyways, it could dissuade you from using the digital product. So what Big's been doing a lot of is shoring up stuff like that, adding in full-time, real-time credit card payments, basically doing a whole lot of SDK work for Alchemy, Q2, what's the name of grants? Connect FS. Building out on top of those products to provide people more services. And we're super excited about it. We actually have a deal running through the end of the year because we've got some extra hours in the first quarter, which is 5% off. We basically sell this time by the hour. So if you're interested, put something in the chat and one of our people will get back with you. But we've been doing just a ton of that, a ton of it
for you guys. Well done.
Yeah. All right, well, let's get moving. This is an odd one today, and that's why I suspect that many people are here because I have a feeling today's not going to go well for John. Today, according to my assistant, my illustrious assistant, is Ask Anything of John Day.
Congratulations on that.
Yeah. Thanks so much. I'm hope I can. And by the way, who knows? Because you can ask anything, doesn't mean I have an answer. So,
It'll be a very one-sided show.
So, Glenn, I have a feeling you're helping to sort of facilitate this. Am I right? Or are you just here to ask questions?
I'm always standing ready because I hate silence. So if nobody else asks, I'll ask.
Now, why don't you break the ice?
Go, Glenn, go.
Let's see. What do I have here? If you were going to start a credit union from scratch these days,
Uh-oh.
what would it look like? Would it have branches? Would you go after a certain field of membership? Would you go to a particular geography? Total greenfield. You could do anything you wanted with a credit union. How would you do it?
Well, for me, I think I would look for up and coming company that was, really doing, very well. I think about some of the new companies. Kevin mentioned one yesterday. Where was Kevin? Kevin, what was the company we were talking about that was determining what the ads you see on YouTube? I can't remember the name of it, but anyways, their stock's been rising. They've been doing really well. They're getting bigger. I would try to stick with the seg base piece. I would probably, from the perspective, it would not be an online only, as most people would suspect because of my proclivity for digital, but the branches would be more of a sales platform. And they would be less about sort of service. That would all be handled digitally as much as I could. The other thing I probably would say about it is that it would be more partnering and less, like I would try to really look at how to out partner and contract more. I would want to keep Alan from True West has a great statement. How do you double the size of your institution but not double the size of your, organization, at the same time? And so I run a really lean. I kind of take the model of a lot of the neobanks, but I would focus it in on partnerships that bring service. And I probably focus in from a technology perspective. It would be less about the core and more about sort of more about sort of like what a platform might look like to marry fintech services with members that need them, and to marry them in a way that would create success on both sides.
Cool. How would the robot? I mean, you're going to CES. I know you were talking last time we got together about the robot, and you're big in the robot thing. How would you work that in? Would that play a role in the branch? Or we talked a lot about elder care, and it's a wonderful application, I think, in terms of helping with things like that, or telehealth, things like along those lines. Do you see an angle for that within the branch or elsewhere within? Oh,
absolutely. There's so many credit unions that have rural areas, right? Rural is a big problem. And now we're finding that, there's been so many articles about like people just quit working, like Chris Odie. I think he just said he's done or whatever. And, I think that we are going to have a need of staffing these rural branches. And it's hard. It's hard to find people in the rural areas, and that's not going away. But what is helping is there's a lot of grants and a lot of stuff coming into play that provide higher bandwidth services. So for example, as you know, I just recently bought a home in Hohenwald, Tennessee, which is it sounds like hole in the wall, but it's Hohenwald, which means high forest, but it's a small place. But they have their local co-op has, put the grants in, and they're putting in super high speed. In fact, some places better than what we have in the cities because it's brand new. I think we have to take advantage of that. I think that the robots could help deal with staffing issues. I think they could help deal with, we have a lot of aging members. So why couldn't we bring banking to their house as opposed to making them go online or making them, do these things? So I think there's a lot of opportunity there, but you have to open your mind to sort of get to get the content out of it. And it needs to come down in cost, which it will. But right now, being able to take Mike and instantly transfer him from, say, branch A, which could be, 3 cities away in a state like Tennessee, and have him immediately be in branch B, which could be 150 miles away, to provide investment services or something. I think that could be powerful. I know you can do it via Zoom, but I think it could be more powerful with the humanoid avatar because there's some feeling to it. So
I particularly like that idea of going to the door. I mean, it kind of ties into that elder care concept that we were talking about as well. Because part of my concern is, losing the personal touch that's, one of the superpowers of credit unions. Well, compared to Zoom or compared to a phone call, guess what? That robot is actually a more personal touch.
Yeah, and there's a concept I've been thinking about a lot that it's going to be a concept of a future podcast, which is I really like this idea of continuity of service. And by continuity of service, I mean the idea that I have made a relationship with Mike at, super service credit union. And I would like to continue to see Mike and be, every time I go and talk to that credit union, I'd like to be able to do that. There, with this system, you could create a continuity of service where Mike doesn't have to drive all the way down there, or that Mike doesn't have, even if I move out of state, theoretically. So I think that there's something to that. I think continuity of service, you heard it here first. You can write it down. It's John's new catchphrase, continuity of service.
Yeah.
And when you say continuity of service, you mean having the same contact point? So I'm comfortable with Mike, and therefore I'm going to get Mike all the time.
Yeah, and static variables. You want a relationship, and all of those things should sort of talk together in a way. And also continuity of service on channels, the whole thing. It's end-to-end continuity of service.
Cool.
All right. So somebody had a question in the chat, I think. Let me look here. Say, what is the technical debt impact on credit unions who resist open APIs? And what advice do you give to empower CUs to adopt oath and other safe user permission data sharing for member financial inclusion and CU growth? That is a fantastic question. This is, so I'll read it again. It's, what is the technical debt impact on credit unions who resist open APIs? And what advice do you give to empower CUs to adopt oath and other safe user permission data sharing for member financial inclusion and CU growth? Wow. So I'll take the first one. The technical debt impact is super high for those of us that are continuing to try to provide services in a way that is sort of this one-off wiring, if you will. And so what she's saying is, remember when I said that you asked me if I would start a credit union, and I said it would be less about the core service and more about the platform. The platform is kind of this thing. You think of Airbnb is a great example. Airbnb didn't build a service, they built a platform, because it's two sides of a coin, right? There's the membership side, or the people that have homes that want to, obviously not Mike because he's in his garage, but have a spare bedroom somewhere. And then there's the people who want to rent that. And they're two different experiences, but the product brings them together by providing trust between the two using the platform. But the way that's done is through something called APIs, which is an application programming interface, which is a set of instructions. So Airbnb, you could think of it as a simple one, as one of them might be, room for rent. And then there would be details. Put in your details about this room. How big is it? Where's it at? Blah, blah, blah. And so all of those would be this thing that you pass through electronically in a very specific way. What we found is because of the nature of credit unions and the nature of the services we have, that APIs may be available, but a lot of times we wind up building things that are sort of one-off due to need over speed, or maybe the APIs are less than appropriate for the service that you're trying to provide. In other words, maybe they're not fast enough and you had to do something else. There's a whole litany of reasons why you wind up with more of a direct connect. And a direct connect would be more akin of picking up a phone and just talking to someone without a form, without something that says, I need all of this information. I think the technical debt impact for that is, it's evident. I think that I can go into any credit union and, the very smart CTOs will tell you, yeah, I got a lot of spaghetti to unwind here. And the question is, do they unwind that spaghetti, or do they burn it to the ground and start over? Or is there a third option? There's been new things that are coming out that are kind of bringing that third option together. And one of those is to sort of front end that spaghetti with something that would allow you to use protocols, or, it's not really a protocol as much as it is an interface or a way like Oath, that allows data sharing. And I have said many times, I'm on record saying this, that Crayon's superpower is collaboration. And the way we want to collaborate for a long time was just sharing best practices. And that's been powerful. But now we need to move into another level, which is sharing data. And I'll explain why. AI is a function of time and scale. And so I'll explain it this way. If I fed an AI a whole bunch of pictures of cats, all my pictures of cats, and I said, hey, AI, learn the cats, and these are my pictures of cats, and I have a couple hundred pictures of cats. As long as those cats were kind of in the frame of my kind of cats, AI would know it was a cat. But I'm not, by myself, I don't have enough pictures of cats to really fully describe every cat that you could run into. So let's say we go to, Mike, and he's got a bunch of pictures of cats. And then we go to Glenn, and he's got a bunch of pictures of cats. And so when we start putting all that information together, our AI becomes more powerful and more quickly. So slowly, as people put in pictures of cats that aren't cats, in my version of it, you would say, well, that's a cat. And they would go, okay, well, now I know that one's a cat. And it's one off, over and over. When you have a consolidation of data, but the misnomer here, or the thing that people really believe is, well, I have to give them all my private and personal data. I have to give them all of this information. I have to give them Mike's social security number and all this. And that's not true. The AI does not need those specifics. What the AI needs is, common data. It needs to know the parameters, things you can share, particularly if they're anonymized. So I do predict that in the future, there are going to be some AI QSOs. There have to be, because the issue is that the talent is behind, for one thing, and that the talent's few and far between. And when you do find them, they're very expensive. It's going to be hard for Crayons to get into that space. So to the point of Oath and others, the way you share that data needs to be normalized so that the people can process it. So it's no good if Glenn gives me a bunch of data, but his data is kind of labeled different and all over the place, and then someone else does. By the time I get all that normalized and in one pile, it's just going to slow that down. So I highly recommend adopting, the ability to share data between organizations and do it in a way that's standardized and anonymized and secure. I believe that's the two questions. Wait, was there one on the end of that? Let me look. And what advice for financial inclusion? I think that's kind of, and Glenn, you and I have talked about this a lot. We had a period in the early 2000s through 2010 where a lot of Crayons were sort of changing their charters, really focusing on sort of servicing a more broad membership. And, one of the things that we've always supposed to been about is financial health, financial, well-being, and financial inclusion falls right into that. And we need to be better about sort of supporting those. And I do believe that AI is really key to that. And here's why. I think that the current lending practices don't help those who are in the financial, outside the regular banking. And so, matter of fact, we met someone yesterday from a company called Effective, Ritesh. Ritesh tells the story of first getting here in India, and no bank will give him any kind of account or anything. And what he's trying to do is build up enough credit so he can live, so he can get an apartment, so he can get, you can't just wander down to the local co-op or the electrical company and just say it's me. But for those of us who live here, we have that luxury because we've always had financials. But those in the underbanked don't have that opportunity. So a Crayon gave him that chance. And because of that, he's now working very hard on AI for Crayons. But this idea that we could boil everybody down to a FICO score is quickly going away. Not because that's a bad strategy. I don't know if it is a bad or good, but our competitors are definitely walking away from just that as their metric. And so with that in mind, as they grow into these other things, they're going to be able to discern what I call a 640 from a 640, which is there are 640s that probably should get that loan, maybe in that middle tier. They're more like a C paper. And then there are 640s that are truly D. Because of our risk tolerance within the organization and our lack of metrics and lack of tools to determine or discern those two types of people, there's a lot of folks who are not getting loans from us that are walking away to other institutions that maybe aren't the best for them. And I hope, well, I know AI is one of the things that will help change that. Now, there'll be those that will talk about bias and other things in the AI. There's bias now in what we do. Anytime there's a human, there's bias. So understanding those metrics, understanding how to create that new service, that new opportunity is a big one. So there's my answer to all of that. Let's see. Who's got
I'll just add something to what you just said. I find it interesting. I think we always just use the phrase underbanked and think that it means one thing, but I think you kind of characterized it that there's a lot of different components of the unbanked or underbanked. You've got, folks who just don't have enough money or have a poor history that's what kind of made them unbankable from that standpoint. You've got people like the gentleman you just referred to who there's no reason he shouldn't be except for a total lack of history. And then you've got another group that's probably doing okay and through culture or whatever, for whatever reason, has decided not to use the banking system. So it's not that they've been locked out, or maybe they were at some point, but now they're like, screw you. You didn't want me before. Now I'm going to do my own thing. So it seems like you might almost need three separate strategies for those. And there's probably more than those three groups I just rattled off too.
Yeah, I think separating those has been too costly and it's, it's cost prohibitive, but whereas AI can help us figure that out. So Trish, okay. So what is John's opinion on how long it will take to have new payment rails take away most of the interchange income for financial institutions? That's our first question. I'll take the second one. Glenn, come back here, buddy. You don't get to run away from that one. Turn your screen back on, bud.
Sorry, I can't. My connection.
This is.
Just stay
if
there.
you ask me that question, my first thought would be to call my buddy Glenn. But here's the question. So what is our opinion of how long the new payment rails, it will take for the new payment rails to take away most of the interchange? I think it's going to be a lot like checks. It's taken almost 15 years for checks to dwindle to where they are now, and they're still out there. I don't know. There's no credit union on this call that's not accepting checks still. I guarantee you. Not one institution I've ever heard of has said we're done with checks. Maybe we should. It's such a small amount. But I think that there's going to have to be something that's going to galvanize that. And crypto's kind of had a little bit, but that's really been for overseas payments. I think that disintermediating the current network has probably been more the game than somebody trying to replace it. And here's why. Apple Pay didn't try to get rid of the rails, though they could have. Apple Pay took the approach of there's 20 billion Visa transactions a day. If I can just get 0.005 of a penny of that by adding myself in the middle of it, that's good money. A lot of other people have taken that approach too. In order for those rails to be displaced, I think that there's going to have to be more unity among, the options that are out there. So, for example, and open connectivity. So, for example, blockchain is the immediate thing that comes to mind, but the governance of it, the many facets of it that not everyone understands. I think it's going to be some time before we see interchange go away. Not to say that interchange won't diminish significantly.
Yeah,
I do believe that, but I think it's a lot like checks. But it will diminish in a way that's almost kind of like going away anyways, because for most credit unions, it's somewhere around 23 to 26% of their income, their non-interest income. And I see that diminishing rapidly from people like PayPal and others that are starting to introduce other ways to source that money.
That last piece is where I was going to go with the two. I was thinking along the same lines as you were about checks, and in a literal way of answering the question, how fast is it going to go away entirely, or half of it, most of it's going to go away? It's going to be a while. And as you said, I think you said 15 years for checks, John. I think it's even longer than that, if I'm not mistaken. I think the Fed says that the top point for checks was sometime in like the mid to late 90s. So it's, and then one of the big events that really drove some of the decline of check, we had check 21, and then you had 9/11. You couldn't fly planes around anymore with checks in them. So, but Even that didn't take them down the whole way. But the last point you just made, I think, is really important, because it doesn't have to go down by half. All it has to do is go down by, stop growing and start going down by 3, 4, 5, 6, 7% a year. And it's pretty darn painful, and it kind of starts the death spiral.
Yeah.
So that's the piece that I think is the more likely scenario, and it's really not any more fun. In fact, it could even be worse.
So her second question is really interesting. I'm wondering if she will mind. I'd like to ask a question about it. Trish, would you mind opening up your mic and coming live for a minute?
Sure thing. Hi, Trish Shermott.
Hey, Trish. So you were asking about she says, how does John see the adoption of NFTs impacting real estate lending in credit unions, and how long is that runway? So I wanted to understand, in the sense of NFTs, are you talking like titles? And
Purchases of almost like a mortgage. So the example the other day I heard was somebody has 100 tokens. They're going to sell 99 of them, and they're going to leave one to themselves to be able to live in that house or condo or whatever it is they've purchased.
Gotcha.
So just wanted to know what your take is on that whole scenario, and just some of these I don't know, scenarios that are coming up as you attend hearings and hear witnesses' testimony, and what's John's take on all this?
Sure. So when I think of non-fungible tokens, most people think the pictures and things that we've seen, but there absolutely is those that are converting their assets to an NFT. And then, for example, if you owned an entire house and you reverse mortgage it, you're essentially NFTing your house to the credit union in a way. This idea that you can use a blockchain to split that up amongst people is very interesting. And I'll use an example that I thought was fascinating. Glenn, did we talk about this on the podcast? I think we did, Glenn. The DAO group that was interested in purchasing the Constitution.
Yep, we sure did.
And I relate the two a little bit, because that DAO group, if for those of you that don't know, DAO in sort of ETH speak is let me remember the name here. The DAO stands for where is it at? Decentralized Autonomous Organization. So the idea was, it's supposed to be like a credit union, right? One vote, one member. Doesn't matter how much money you have in it. It's a co-op. It's a true co-op experience. And so that part in relation to NFTs has been fascinating to me, because the idea that a whole bunch of people could get together, use this DAO mechanism in Ethereum without creating a company, they just created an entity, and I could put a nickel in and Glenn could put $250,000 in, but we both own a share of the Constitution, one of the original documents. So the splitting up of assets using the Ethereum platform makes a lot of sense to me in regards to at least understanding who owns assets and what the value of that asset is, and where it goes. What I'm missing is, and I know this is the part that nobody wants, but in order for that to work, there's going to have to be a regulatory body that's going to have to get involved. So I think in the sense of NFTs, as it relates to financial instruments, we're going to see that continue. When it hits financial instruments, one, the systems aren't set up to handle this right away. And two, and we've already seen this with crypto in terms of the actual, crypto cash and things like that, and all the new companies that have popped up to deal with, providing interest on crypto, on held crypto, those sorts of things, but it can't be done by banks. We're going to have a similar problem with real estate and other assets, titled assets, but the actual platform makes all the sense in the world to use. I mean, it's a far more efficient way of dealing with that. Like, I often joke that, hey, Glenn, if I wanted to sell you my car, how I do that if I own it, I flip the title over and I sign it. I don't even need to really even use my signature. I could just have my dog, in a Sharpie. I mean, there's nothing really, other than I just, what's getting that to happen is that title that I have, that piece of paper, that's parchment that has been bonded, like a check or whatever, where it's got a watermark and all those kinds of things, which is too easy to duplicate with today's technology. So I guess my opinion is that we'll continue to see the rise of NFTs in non-financial instruments and overseas. And then, as per usual, we may see more of a government-related NFT. And one area that we've talked about before is participation loans. That is a tremendous opportunity for NFTs to be able to take two crayons, maybe one that has far more liquidity than another, but once the other one's got the loan on the hook and the other one wants to get involved, the challenge of that is it's been done, but it's never been done at scale. And at scale is how you can win the game. But the reason it's never been done at scale is because it's too complex. It's too it's too unruly to deal with the up to 3 or 4 people or crayons in the participation loan. It becomes a headache in terms of who got the payment, distribution, the profits, what the asset looks like if it gets foreclosed, getting everybody together. The blockchain could solve all that in a very quick way. So I do think there's tremendous opportunity for it, but I think when it comes to financial instruments, we're going to see those wheels move slow. I do think that space, which is fascinating, could be commoditized in space, and flying cars and new types of titling systems are likely to be commoditized in a different way and have different financial instruments attached to them because of FAA regulations and other things. And that's where you might see this start, because it's a green field. It's a place that they don't have to sort of wag the tail of the rest of the services and regulations that are in place state by state.
This may be kind of a follow-up. I'm not sure if it's kind of an additional part of the answer or more just a further question for John. But the one difference with the attempt to buy the Constitution that comes to mind is that there was no profit motive there. And like you said, you could invest 5 cents, you could invest $250,000, you got the same vote. Trish, to your example, I assume that the vast majority, 99.99% of things with real estate and things like that will be profit motivated. So you're going to wind up with a smart contract with some kind of rules of engagement behind the scenes. So whether there's a regulatory component, I agree there will be. But even if there isn't, there's probably, the money is going to make sure that they're protected in some way. In which case, it does feel to me a little bit more like it's more than just a real NFT. It's kind of more just moving the record keeping of titles and whatnot onto the blockchain and making it easier to subdivide it a bit more. Would you agree? Well,
and even just the issue always regulatory wise is they want to come in and they care more about your documentation than the actual incidents, right? So in this case, that would be a foregone conclusion. Anyone could jump on the terminal, see exactly where it is, see every bit of the history in a way that you never could before. Particularly amongst institutions, because that was never a thing, because that asset would not live at one particular institution. It would live in the chain. Yeah. And that's what makes everything very different, is when those assets migrate. And that goes back to Kat's question about APIs. I mean, if you don't have a system that can support that, you're not going to be able to jump into this new world of, and I see those things like participation loans and stuff like that as that's the real opportunity for collaboration, is marrying liquidity. I mean, how many rural areas do we have that are just up to their ears in liquidity, but not enough loans? And then we have other places that have just tons of loans, but not enough liquidity to support it. Getting the entire organization in a way that they could do that in a more meaningful and less regional way would be very valuable. So, Kat, I think you had another question. Would you care to unmute and ask?
Yes, I'm here. Hi, everyone. John, this is amazing. Where have I been for the last 10 plus years aligned with Credit Union World? And this is the first quarter that I've gotten to know what you do. This is phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you.
Let me just start with that.
It's Mike and Glenn and all these other people.
All of you.
Yeah, great group.
Really, like, thought leadership is sort of trite to say, but you really are providing a lot of insight into areas that I think Credit Union World in general in the United States is hungry for and should have a much broader, louder voice. So thank you.
Well, thank you. That's the intention of this. Though
Yeah.
my opinion in a nickel will get you some soup, but
Well, then you have a lot of nickels, or I have a lot of nickels to give you, one or the other. So I think my second question really kind of hinged on the first question. So if what we're looking at is providing scale and access and parity, all of the things that we advocate for in credit union world, for sustainability and business service, while still remaining true to who credit unions are. Like, I am no longer within credit union world directly. I'm with MX, but I still, as you can tell, very, very much, very vocal on this. So my question quickly is, one of my colleagues who is in Canada really advocates for credit unions in the Canadian space. And as you all know, Canada has that organized, galvanized way of being able to get more scale and traction as a unified, really a movement, if you will. So I've been around long enough to know that shared branching didn't always hit it off too great. Some liked it, some didn't. Sometimes you'll get into networking with maybe 3 credit unions want to do something. If you do it well, others back out. So what's the secret ingredient? What is it? And maybe it's not that we want to do what Canada does specifically, but what does it take, or when does that happen? Like you said, that's that QSO or platform that is AI, or that is an API environment, so that everybody can benefit from, from the $50 billion credit union all the way up to the larger credit unions.
yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head, which is the beneficial part, right? So I think that the issue with shared branching, and God bless them, I was around when we came up with it. It was Bucky and Ed Callahan and the group that pulled that together. But every idea has unintended consequences. So who would have saw? I believe it was Wings Credit Union, who had so many other members sort of accessing that, and sort of decided that, hey, we can pick off those members. I think that when that system was designed, but there wasn't a monetary benefit to collaborate. I think to the extent that a blockchain technology or something like that could create an arbitration system. I like the way Trish put it, tokens, right? Because trying to, so for example, imagine a whole new line of business if X credit union could make a loan for Y credit union's member and also participate in that loan in a way. So get something out of boarding it, get something out of that person. And I'm not talking just bricks and mortar. I'm talking digitally as well. I think that that's going to be the secret ingredient, is how do we, one, provide protection, because that's a big concern that keeps people from interacting, because there's so much cannibalization or perceived cannibalization of the regional organizations. I've heard many credit go, well, we'd love to, we're happy to work and collaborate. We just don't want to collaborate with, XYZ across the street over there, because they share a membership. And to be fair, it's hard to argue that point. But original credit union, if you remember, the original credit union charters would have prevented that, because XYZ credit union across the way would have dealt with a SEG, and the other one would have dealt with, say, another one. There might be some crossover, but it wouldn't have been a lot. But in today's world of contractors, the gig workers is a really big one. I see that as a game changer, given that so many people are leaving their jobs. So I think that's part of what the success is in Canada. If you look at, and Glenn and I have talked about this before, that's why Visa and the retailers love Canada, because it's a fixed rate for interchange. There's a fixed system, but that assumes everybody's on a level playing field. In Canada, that's easier because there's not as many credit unions, never have been in Canada, even though that's one of the places it started. And part of the reason for that is, to your point, that they've always had this idea of shared services. And so that's been, really powerful, and it's been driven into the co-ops. But there are only, the really big ones, the Van Cities, the major ones across the way. They all participate almost at the same level as the regional and bigger banks. My feeling is that you could build that network, but there's always this feeling of, well, we're a big credit union, and because we have more resources, we're carrying the smaller one. And if that could be overcome with compensation, with privacy, I think more people would do it. Initially, it was, when it was originally done, it was about, it was much more in the spirit when Ed and Bucky and those kind of came up with it. It was much more in the spirit of dealing with what was starting to be a transient population. For example, Patelco was a Bell credit union, so was GTE, which is where they came from. And because the Bells got broken up into baby Bells, that ruined the segs and caused a big issue, which people don't realize that was kind of the impetus for a lot of that. Because those charters had to be split up as well and reapplied for and changed around. Now we're in this moment where most everybody's state chartered and has more regional opportunity, but that cannibalizes everybody across the board. So, I do think that someone could build something that would create an arbitration in a way that would compensate those fairly for the resources they provide, but at the same time, manifest the brand of the origination. We'd have something. Those are big words, but that's what I got.
Well, and just to throw it out there, I'm sure it's on a lot of people's minds is, when you think of Akoya, for example, Akoya has done that. I mean, they have that, in a sense, a Canadian model, because they have the bigger banks started. They used Fidelity. It's more of that sort of neutral. It's
a clearinghouse. Fidelity is a clearinghouse.
Right. So it created some neutrality, which is part of why that was.
By the way, we had that and we destroyed it. We had corporate credit unions up until 2008 when everything sank. We had a huge corporate credit union. It was a centralized clearinghouse, and it brought us savings and bill pay, because if you look at, take all the volume of all the credit unions together, and you're not even close to a Bank of America and the kind of scale they have. So scale is an issue. And without a clearinghouse to do that. But the good news is that we've happened to fall into this mode where decentralized is becoming the thing. And so I feel like the Canadian model is still an issue, because you have someone in the middle who has to sort of adopt all of that. They're the ones that are stuck with all the liability. And they're basically saying, look, join us, but you have to indemnify us. That cannot be the case. You cannot sort of have a centralized player that just says, yeah, we're so big, you have to indemnify us. That's what rules are about. And they're more
captured too. Yeah, exactly. And you lose the control and the ability to monetize, kind of like the insurance models of build, buy, or outsource.
Right.
So you're right. There's somewhere in there, whether it's correlation and other really fine core providers are being part of the solution. I think on a bigger scale, offering scale, you have other solutions out there in terms of aggregation, where it's either giving you more control and access, or like you said, really being held more accountable, more in terms of giving away a lot of that control.
Well, and I think
the conversation though.
You mentioned the captured business model. That's where we also have to look at it, right? So for example, why can't I download all my bill pay payees from IndyHome Banking? It's because we all think it's a captured business model. But that always fails, always. Look at long distance calling, an example of a captured business model where look at the original network schemes. Glenn can go back to the original Ceus and what's the other platform? Ceus and the others that started out as local regional networks that were tying together and eventually became those bigger networks. And that's a great model to look at, because there's an arbitration there, right? When you cross those networks, everybody makes their penny. And now I can remember a day when I used to have to go up to a gas pump, flip over my card, try to, figure out if that bug looked like, and some of the bugs kind of looked the same with slight difference. It was like a game, like, we'll see if this will work. So yeah, by the way, I heard about Brandon, and I loved Brandon. He was a good friend.
You know Brandon. You knew Brandon.
It was sad.
You were able to attend any of the services, either streaming
or? Brandon and I jammed quite a bit for
really.
Some time. We used to hang out, a long time ago. I love that guy. He's the brightest guy I ever knew, and just a nice person. So
he was. Yeah, words don't explain. Thank you very much. Very kind.
Oh, of course. So Gary Coates, I don't know if I can take questions from Gary Coates, but I probably will. Thank you, Kat. Let's see. What about immediate transfers between credit unions with more and more credit unions getting? Yeah, I think you're that was exactly kind of what we're talking about, Gary, is and it's interesting because not only do we have that problem with just state to state, and Spring App is something that is out there, but I still think that's a fantastic opportunity for a blockchain, where you could convert it to a token, any credit union could pick it up. It was the original idea of Ceus Ledger. And then, but what we hear is whenever we bring that up is, there's not that much need to transfer between credit unions. That's always sort of the end game. But to me, once you get those pipes going to where you can intermediate between two credit unions and deliver value, know what that value is, and the other side can get paid for providing that service. Once you open up those pipes, man, there's a big opportunity there. But when you just ask the general population, particularly, you start to float these ideas of blockchain use cases and you talk about value transfer, it's not one that gains a ton of traction.
I agree 100%. The biggest problem is right now through online banking, I can push money to another institution. The problem is it takes 3 days to settle. So if I have an urgent need I'll have to take out some cash and go to an ATM and deposit it in the other credit union that I want to transfer the money to. And
so I'll tell you how to do it. I'll tell you how to ad hoc do it if you want. Okay. So you go into PayPal. I assume that you have debit cards from both organizations. Are you a member of both?
Yep.
So put both debit cards into PayPal, and they have right now it's still free instant transfer. So basically you instant transfer out of one and you can turn around and instant transfer in the other one, and it happens in seconds.
I thought they charged for that.
They did. They were charging $10, but they've turned it off, at least the last couple of times I've used it.
Okay. Well, I'll have to look into that.
But it's not, it's still not a great solution. I think that, I think it would show, one thing that's interesting that shared branching did do, and is it galvanized a lot of the credit union at the time. And Gary, you and I are around for this. Mm-hmm. A lot of the HR, the credit union branding that was sort of happening out of CUNA and NAFQ and those kinds of guys, where they were sort of a lot of people putting money in to have, commercials on TV that basically said, we're a credit union. And then you started to see the shared branching sort of, sometimes they were called credit union exchanges, where there'd be like 7 or 8 credit unions represented there. It began that conversation, but I think it did help that marketing conversation to be more potent. It was because it felt more inclusive because there were branches all over, because it was hard to have a national advertising strategy when everything you have is regional. Right. And so it's hard to
go ahead.
No, it's just hard to spend that money.
Right. When we started, Ted and I first spun off from First Tech, the first project I worked on was CU Access, which was the shared branch network for Oregon and Washington. And our exchange was through the exchange up in Seattle was the ATM switch that we used. Yeah. And it was the host down in Corvallis Summit. They were the back end of it.
Oh yeah, they were one of the original providers for that would do that switching. Yep.
Yeah, but the biggest challenge we had 11 credit unions. Their CEOs were on our board to try and grow it. The biggest challenge was the biggest credit union, Portland Teachers in Oregon, wouldn't participate. They'd be an issuer, but they wouldn't be an acquirer. So other members couldn't go into their branches. Well, they had the biggest branch network. The other issue was credit unions stealing other credit unions members. So it was forbidden to say, hey, if you join XYZ credit union, I know you belong to ABC, we can help you. You won't have to use shared branching to do your business. But that was forbidden. And we threatened to kick credit unions out if they did that. Nobody was ever kicked out, but now there's a trend of everybody's getting out of shared branching, and the Spring app works great. I can transfer between 2 of my credit unions, but one of them is going away January 1. So I'll have to find an alternative. That's why I brought it up.
And I think
Alternative of being
RTP
able to do an immediate transfer.
Yeah, talk to Glenn about RTP because RTP is basically an immediate ACH. And we were talking to Zach out at Forefront, and man, he's seen that really go up. Glenn, do you think that RTP is going to be a solution for that?
It's got potential. I think it still comes back to how people choose to charge for it. I mean, the use cases are still being worked out, but it certainly could do the trick. I mean, and also, as RTP has said many times, they don't intend to actually create the products. They intend to enable them behind the scenes in terms of how they, people decide to ride the rails. So if someone can build a sleek enough, interface on top of that, absolutely could be a solution.
Well, that's where AI comes into play again too, because one of the challenges we have for transfers and security within the platform is that we used to have a building and it had like 2 or 3 front doors, and it wasn't hard to put some cameras on them and keep an eye on them. Now we've got like 60 front doors. It could be ACH, it could be PayPal, it could be this, it could be that. And we tend to buy systems to monitor all that, but getting them all tied together, because the real value is the correlation of, hey, anytime somebody does this and then immediately turns around and does an RTP, that's sus. To use my kid's term, that's a kid's term, Glenn. It's called sus. It means suspect. So just so you know. But it's sus, but finding those sus moments is hard when you're not getting a 50,000 foot view, and one person or several people or different departments are all sort of in charge of these various platforms, and it's hard to build a correlation, and that's what's going to happen. So things like RTP, I think, are really super valuable, but I do worry that they could become cost prohibitive, because as we know, it's just a matter of time before hackers sort of discover what that is. And we were just having this discussion in the IC about that. So I think that it's going to be interesting, because I think for now it's kind of open and clear, but right up until the first $100,000 disappears, and then there'll be a lot more rules. Well, guess what, Glenn and Mike and everyone, it is 1:58. So unless somebody's got a 2-minute question, I think we can call this, but I want to use the last few minutes to just thank everybody on this call who took time to join, and in particular asking questions, Kat and Trish and just the group. And can't thank you enough. Oh, hey, looky there. Did she venture out to the garage?
Yes.
Yeah.
She wants to freeze too.
She wants to start a small fire.
Yes.
But anyways, I just want to wish everyone a great holiday, and thank you for another great year. And thanks for all the people that just keep coming back and supporting this. We're super thankful. And Glenn, Melissa, if you can remind me, we need to get 154 on the sponsorship screen. So let's make sure we do that in the next one.
Agreed.
With that in mind, I happy holidays. And if you have more questions, don't be afraid to send them to Glenn. We'll post his email, and I can give you his cell. So just hit me. And
we're taking a couple of weeks off. I think in the first week of January, you're going to be at CES. So I think we're looking at the 12th for the next one, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep. So super exciting. And I'm just very thankful for everyone. And I hope everyone just has a great holiday.
See ya.
Mike, what was her name?
Thanks, John. See ya.
That would be Savannah.
That'd be Savannah. That's right.
One of the twins.
I was going to say, she's one of the twins, right?
Yes.
Gotcha.
One half of the duo.
One half of the, well, she'd probably prefer to be her own entity, if I had to guess.
Oh yeah, they're very individual. Yeah.
Yes, I would imagine.
They look alike, but they're nothing alike.
They can't communicate via their brains, right?
Oh my gosh, yeah. They have separate rooms on either side of the house, and they still talk. Yes.
Yeah, that's not good. Yeah.
Telepathy thing. Oh, here's another one. Come on. There they are.
We got them both.
Marley, Savannah.
Can you guys talk like without talking? Can you hear each other's thoughts? That's not good. You both shook your head at the same time. I feel like you can.
See, they did. Yeah.
Yeah, that's weird. So like if you go like this, okay, so real quick, I got to go in a minute, but I want to ask this. Wait, come back. That was Savannah. Was the other one? Wait, come back.
They gotta go.
Question.
They're smart.
They gotta go, John.
No, I wanted to ask them, like one of them to think of a number and the other one to tell me what it was. I'm sure you
It's
do
just
that.
one number. That'd be fine. Yeah.
Like sure they can figure it out.
Oh, yeah.
That's crazy.
They're like that.
Awesome.
freaky like that.
Well, I hope to see you guys soon.
Yeah, look forward to it in person
Yeah, man.
next
Thanks,
year.
All right. So glad everybody joined. Take care.
Happy holidays.
Literally see you guys next year.
Yep.
All right. Happy holidays. Bye.